My name's Graham Makepeace-Warne, CEO of Manx Wildlife Trust, and today we're looking at ponds and dubs. And one of the best things that anyone can do for wildlife on their own land in their garden is to provide water, whether that be a pond as small as a washing up bowl. I've seen in some yards still brings a lot of invertebrate life, which then supports the bottom of the food web. So the birds will come in and feed from that, and you'll bring more and more wildlife into your garden.
Well, here we are in a little short series of Wild Man. That's the Isle of Man in the wild, which to my book is probably the thing it does best. Forget all the politics and everything else. Get out in the wild and it'll soon restore your faith in life one way or another, whether it's a forest or down on the beach or having a paddle or just walking through the hills. Or in this case, as we are today in this little series, taking a look at various aspects of Wild Man that perhaps you could have a look at or think about or maybe even do in your own garden. And in this first case, perhaps a little bit of both, because today we're thinking about ponds and dubs. And started off with Graham, and we've actually come into his backyard, which is a very lovely, I say yard, it's a lovely little place, garden, not even little, beautiful. And we are by a bit of water, not running water, so you can't hear it, but it's full of life. It's a lovely autumnal lunchtime, and we better start with first things first, Graham. Pond or dub this?
So this is a pond because it's lined.
And that is the main difference we're talking about. Is it ponds lined, dubs natural?
Well, it's probably a bit of a murky area. So dub is the traditional Manx name for a pond, but the way I think of a dub is generally on farmland, and we'll have a look at one later. So they will be naturally damp places. Don't need lining. They will often dry out during the year, and they have a particular zone from the high water level in the winter to the low water level in the summer that creates this really important sort of muddy area for a lot of species to breed and exist in.
So sitting here by this pond, gorgeous little area, looks entirely natural, but is this entirely man-made?
Entirely man-made. I would have done a dub or a scrape if I could, but the ground here is very sandy, so any water here is just going to disappear into the ground. So this is a lined pond. I did try quite hard. It started out as a plastic lining sheet with rocks all the way around, which has that sort of classic garden pond look about it. But now that it's grown in, I mean, it's what, 3.5 years old now. I'm starting to move those rocks away, and it's just blending into the rest of the wildflower meadow here. So it looks quite natural, but it's not at all.
And that's, 3 years you're saying, and you look at it and you genuinely would think this has been here forever.
Yeah, well, that was the aim, and it will keep going, and I haven't had to clear anything out of it yet, but in time, obviously, you can see the oxygenating pondweeds there are starting to take over, so probably from next year I'm going to have to start removing some of that so it doesn't just grow out, because ponds naturally want to grow out, so we do have to manage them a bit.
So what's the benefit of bringing water into the natural environs, whether it's in your back garden like here, or maybe in a parkland, or even out and about around the Isle of Man? What's the importance of it?
Water just supports so many species. I mean, you can see sat here now, there's dozens of commandatas flying around us. We can see diving beetles. Water just supports so much life as a place to live and breed and feed. And by bringing in the invertebrates, the little insects and stuff like that, you bring the other stuff as well. And over us, we've got barn swallows flying around, and they'll come down and skim the surface of the water, and they'll pick off the whirligig beetles there. It just supports so much in terms of biodiversity.
Do you have to do, because again, I've never actually done a pond myself, I keep toying with the idea, I might come to that in a moment, but again, is it important to have it of varying depths, going from relatively shallow at the edges to a sort of deeper level in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, you can do ponds in lots of different ways, and it's nice actually to have a variety, but the things that are really important is a shallow beach area which allows wildlife to get in and out easily. If you imagine a hedgehog falling into this body of water, is there somewhere where it can climb out? And you can see we've got a few sheep in here today that are just eating down the wildflower meadow. They will come in and obviously drink and eat the flowers at the edge of the pond, and they churn up that beach area, which creates specific habitat for certain species to breed in. As I say, that changing water level as it dries out in the summer and gets wetter in the winter will create that zone that's perfect for these species. So beach area obviously very, very important. You don't need to go too deep. Depth is really important for fish, but with a good wildlife pond, we don't necessarily want fish. We certainly don't want to introduce fish. You might get fish naturally. The eggs can come in on the feet of ducks and things like that.
Really, that can happen, can it? You can sort of end up with fish even though you didn't put fish in it.
Absolutely, yeah. The ducks can bring the eggs in on their feet, and it's always amazed me, even with this pond, that literally the day I put it in, great diving beetles just appear from nowhere because they can fly in, and you just straight away you've got life in this body of water. You just think, where's that come from?
Well, I've always heard that people say, put in a pond, put in some water, and the wildlife will appear. That is true.
Absolutely, in my experience, 100% true. And I've even seen it, I built a greenhouse with a trough to capture rainwater. And again, the day I put that in, I saw a diving beetle in it. And it could only have flown there from somewhere. But straight away, it sees that body of water and thinks, yep, that's where I want to be.
So is it important, again, we're looking around here and sort of like, I think, bulrush to the left there and some reeds in front of us. Are these planted up? Is it something you need to plant up? Or again, can you just sort of leave it to naturalise?
So I'm very lucky, obviously working at Manx Wildlife Trust. We had our wildflower nursery at Mullin-a-Cloy, and our conservation officer Andre Doubledon was very kind in giving me some of the key species that we've got here. So the bog bean, the yellow flag iris, the purple loosestrife, the creeping willow. But the bulrush that you mentioned, that's actually coming of its own accord. So obviously the bulrush seed can go for miles on the wind, and we're not really sure where it's come from because there isn't a great deal of bulrush naturally in the north of the island, but it's come here.
Yeah, excellent. And which one's the bog bean? That's
bog bean. It's not flowering anymore, but it's this sort of cupped greenish yellowish leaf that's sort of coming out under the water.
Yeah, gorgeous. So again, so a little bit of that planting out there, and then the oxygenating sort of weed that comes in, does that need to be planted up as well?
I did introduce that, yeah. Again, that came from a friend's pond who already had some. And you have to be very careful. There's some non-native species that can be a bit of a problem. Duckweed is one that often just comes in on the feet of ducks, and it just takes over like a blanket. So you want to get to know the plants that you want in your pond and the plants that you don't want in your pond. If you're going to do one on this scale, I mean, this is quite a large pond, 10 metres by 5 metres. Not everyone's going to have that sort of room. But I have seen washing up bowls in yards that, with a couple of plants in and a brick so things can get in and out, and it has brought a huge amount of biodiversity to that yard.
And that's exactly what I was thinking, because obviously you've got a lot of space here, and not everyone's going to have this sort of space. But if someone, as you say, is in town, maybe just has a little backyard, little back garden or something, you can still do something on a much more modest scale.
Absolutely. The smallest, I would say, is what's called hoverfly lagoons. So hoverflies would lay their eggs and their larvae would grow in what are called lagoons, and they form basically in the nooks of trees. So where the branches come out from the trunk of the tree, that can often create a little nook where a little bit of water sits, and that's enough for hoverfly larvae to grow. And their larvae is this very unfairly named rat-tailed maggot. Sorry, long-tailed maggot. And they're not the nicest looking things, but again, they will feed a lot of species, and they will grow to be, hoverflies, which are important pollinators and really nice to see.
And what about sort of maintenance? Because again, is there a lot involved in actually keeping it healthy? Because it's like a lot of things in nature sometimes, or some wild areas, they do need managing. And again, I'm sure we've all seen sort of areas of water which just seem to be rancid green sludge.
Yeah, so that's why we have the oxygenating pond plants. And you want to keep the fertility down, the nutrients down in the water. So you don't want to introduce any soil. So this has been, as I say, it's lined with a plastic sheet, and then that's been covered with builder's sand. Very, no nutrients in there whatsoever. And then the oxygenating plants will keep the oxygen level up, they'll keep the nutrient levels down, they'll stop the algal blooms. You do still get algal blooms because there's very little shade on this pond, and on a day like today with a lot of sun, it can cause the algae to bloom. But that will generally, if you get the balance right, it will manage itself. One thing you do need to be aware of if you're doing a pond of this sort of scale, you do need to get planning permission. A lot of people don't.
Okay.
For a pond, yes. For a scrape, no, because a scrape is free to drain naturally. A pond is basically an unnatural body of water in the eyes of the planning department, so you would need to get planning permission for that.
Is that for any size pond, or?
I think it might be. There might be a minimum size. I must admit, I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's worth looking into it before you go ahead and dig out a massive pond in your back garden.
But if you want to do a scrape, that is something which isn't always full of water.
Yeah, so a scrape is literally going in with a digger, scraping off. It might be just a foot of the topsoil in the right location. So wetlands aren't always the right place to do a pond, but often on farms where there is support from the Agri-Environment Scheme for dubs, it's in the corners of fields where it's already wet. So the farmer can't grow anything there. It's of no use to the sort of food production industry. And they will just scrape off about a foot of soil at the top, leaving quite shallow edges, and then allow livestock around that area. And that, as I say, will create this churned up area of mud that is so important to a lot of farmland birds, curlew, that sort of thing.
And do you get the same sort of, or does it attract the same sort of species when it comes to birds or wildlife, or like sort of the darters or insects that we're seeing in, say, a scrape as you would do in a man-made pond?
Yeah, everything's different, and I've learned so much since building my own pond. I have to say, this is my happy place. I think normally when
See why?
Well, I think normally when I speak to you, I'm running into Douglas, you're popping in for 20 minutes, having a quick chat, and it's probably always very fast and energised. And I come out here and sit and just watch life living in this pond, and it's so good for my own mental health, so good for relaxing. I wouldn't want to be without it. Within a year of building this pond, I had a emperor dragonfly, which is the biggest dragonfly, a lovely green and blue emerald sort of dragonfly, and it was laying eggs on that bog bean right there. Wow. I've got a photo of it in the house actually. And the following spring, we had 100 emperor dragonflies emerge, and you can count this quite easily because they leave when they come out as larvae, they latch onto a plant like the bulrush, and they exude their shell, so they leave what's called an exuvia, which is basically their discarded skin, and then they fly off. They dry their wings out and they fly off. And so you can go around and pick these exuvia up, and I had a box of 100 exuvia that I was able to give to our education officer at work to show the students. And that I found out was the largest emergence of emperor dragonflies ever recorded on the island.
Wow.
The previous record was 13 at the Point of Ayre Nature Reserve, the Manx Birdlife one. So I can't tell you how good that makes you feel. You think that's only there because I built this pond.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very good for your ego. I've then discovered that emperor dragonflies particularly like new ponds. So what I've found this year is there are a lot less emperor dragonflies, and we've got common hawkers instead. And you don't get to learn all this stuff until you actually build a pond and start thinking, well, why is that happening? And you find out and learn it. So so a pond like this will attract slightly different species to a scrape or a dub. A lot of the plant species that like wetland areas will be similar, but you'll find that a lot of the invertebrates they like very specific nutrient levels, acidity levels, certain conditions. So you will find different species in each of those places.
So we could sit here all day because I can see why it's a happy place. You could sit here for hours just watching the wildlife and the birds, and again you can hear a little bit of the breeze coming down. And sheep have left us alone now, I must admit. They must have decided to paddle off into the corner somewhere. But we'll go and take a look at a dub then. So a very different beast, or is it just the difference between something natural on farmland and man-made in perhaps a garden scenario?
Yeah, well, we're going to look at a dub which is a natural historic dub, and actually we have really good mapping from the 1800s that shows where all the ponds were around the island. And ponds and dubs will have been created after the Ice Age as boulders of ice melted and left a big hollow in the ground which filled with water, and that would have been the original pond, and they would have been the feeding stations for farms. So that's where the livestock would have gone and got their water from. Then obviously we got piped water, we've got mains water supply, so dubs and ponds, farm ponds, no longer had a purpose, and so generally they got filled in, they grew out, they were fenced off, and you didn't get this interaction between livestock and bodies of water anymore. So that's why we're trying to encourage at Manx Wildlife Trust and DEFRA through the Agri-Environment Scheme, trying to encourage farmers to put dubs and scrapes back in to create those very important habitats.
Tempting though it is to sit here in the sun, we better go and take a look then. So right, lead the way, as they say.
The sheep have realised we haven't got any food.
That's why they've gone. Where have they gone? Oh, there they are.
They like the ivy. They absolutely love ivy.
There it goes.
Yeah, this is proper job.
So here we go. So a little bit down the road, left the pond. So left Graham's Pond, a short little trip up to the north. Gorgeous. It is a lovely day. We're just debating whether it's still summer or whether it's autumn, because it's blue skied. We are technically into autumn, but there's still a nice feeling of summer about it. Right then, Graham. So here we are again. Tell us where we are now. Where are we headed up, and what are we looking at now?
We've come to Smale Farm, Steve Martin's farm, and we're looking at a natural dub, which is a largish body of water, obviously a lot bigger than my pond at home. I just described it as proper job as we walked up to it. But yeah, a decent body of water, and a few ducks flew off as we walked up to it just then.
So, I mean, presumably something like this sort of size and in a farm environment, you can't sort of look after it the way that you might do with your pond.
No, absolutely. And it will need less management because the livestock will come in here, so they will keep the sallies back, the willow and the sort of stuff that you'll get growing up around a dub like this. They will keep that back, and it will generally exist as it is. The important thing here is the water level will go up and down. As I say, at this time in the summer it's quite low. In the winter it will come up after the rains, and that creates these sort of you can almost think of it like a tidal zone around the pond, where again the livestock's hooves will churn up that ground and create this habitat that's really good for certain invertebrates that will bring in those wading birds to kind of sift through that mud and find those invertebrates for food.
And what is the advantage then of having, because again you could look here if you came along and looked at the landscape, looked at the field and think, okay, it's grazing, it's farmland. Why would it be advantageous to have a dub in a situation like this?
So historically, dubs would have been used as the water source for the livestock on that farm, and as I said before, we've now got mains water, so we don't need them for that purpose anymore. But they've been around so long that wildlife has evolved to live in these conditions, to live in these habitats. So that's why we'd like to see more of them. And we can see on maps from the 1800s that there used to be a lot of ponds around the island that have since grown out or been filled in or removed. So there is a scheme through DEFRA, through the Agri-Environment Scheme, to encourage farmers to put dubs in. But there's problems as well because, as I said before, for a lined pond or a dub or even scrapes in some cases, the planning department can decide that they need planning permission, and that obviously creates cost and a bit of bureaucracy and time that farmers just don't have. You know, they want to do the right thing. There is funding there to support them to do it, but then that's mitigated by having to get planning, which, as you can see here, this is a natural dub, but the ones on the other side of the field that have been put in, they won't affect anyone. They're just part of the field that isn't used in the food production system, and it's creating great habitat, which is an ecosystem service. It's doing great things for wildlife and people.
And why were the dubs then, because you were saying that they were some of these natural dubs were filled in and taken out, was it because they weren't appreciated at the time, or people just wanted more land for grazing?
I think it probably came around the intensification of farming, the Common Agricultural Policy, just trying to get every inch of farmable land within a field. As I say, it's no longer needed as a water supply for the livestock, so we may as well fill that in and use it as part of the field.
And I suppose it's, again, we often hear, and I know David Bellamy does an awful lot of work on this as well. And I suppose this is how important it is, this whole idea of farmers working hand in glove with sort of conservationists as well, rather than, I think at one stage it always used to be seen that there'd be farmers on one side of the fence and the conservationists on the other, and now it seems to me that it's very much a case of trying to have the two working hand in glove, as it were.
Absolutely. We're all trying to achieve the same things. We want a food supply for people. We want habitat that is good for wildlife, because we know wildlife supports the creation of that food supply. We need pollinators. And so what we're finding at the moment is that there are schemes in place to support farmers, but they're not really quite enough. And we've got farmers like Steve Martin who are, pro-wildlife. They want to do the right thing, but we need to make it easier for them to do that.
And so we sort of talking about this before, but looking around here now, again, there's some reeds down the bottom here, there's sort of a hawthorn in front of us, some blackberries coming out on the side there. Do you get a very different sort of species surrounding here when, bearing in mind this is natural, and again, I suppose, you can't plant it up, you can't put it in the sort of oxygenating plants. How does that actually work? Because this looks clear, it doesn't look like it's sort of stagnant or slimy or whatever. How does it work naturally? Will it balance itself out?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is obviously a much older body of water than my 3-year-old pond at home. So everything that needs to be there has come there naturally. It's evolved naturally. It's got everything it needs. As you rightly point out, there's tons of food here. The hawthorn berries, the blackberries. There's lots here for wildlife. So it doesn't really need a lot of management or a lot of looking after.
And just again, thinking on bodies of water, clearly we've been talking about ponds, we've been talking about dubs today, we've mentioned scrapes as well. If you sort of go up the water ladder, as it were, and you get to sort of lakes and things like, I suppose, the reservoirs around the island, do they serve a similar sort of purpose when it comes to wildlife, or is that a totally different kettle of fish?
They definitely serve a purpose, but again, it's different. So lakes will have less of these sort of margins and obviously a larger body of water, so you're going to see more and larger fish species. So there's been an osprey spotted on Ireland a lot over the last week, and an osprey, if it was going to stick around, would really need those larger bodies of water with fish in. That really only really exist here as reservoirs. So yeah, absolutely, slightly different again, but still very, very important.
And are there plenty of dubs around the island now? I mean, you were saying there that quite a few of them have been sort of filled in over the years, and there's now an encouragement to maybe bring some of them back. Are there plenty, or are they sort of few and far between?
I can't remember the exact numbers. I could come back to you on it, but I think it's... If you looked at the map from the 1800s that shows all the ponds and look at what there is now, it's probably in the region of sort of 10 to 15% of what there was once at one time. And there's been some really good data recorded. The wetland bird surveys that happen, a lot of our island dubs, that have been going for a long, long time, gives us really good data. But we know there should be more bodies of water than there are now in the Isle of Man, and we need to encourage people to do exactly that. And the other thing I'd say about this one is, unlike my pond at home, which is very close to the house and therefore disturbed quite regularly, this is in the middle of a field. You look around, you can't even see a road or a building. So for the farmland birds and things like that, they can feel really safe here, and it's a place where they can happily feed and breed in peace.
Okay, so we've just paddled across the field. Here we are with Steve Martin up at Smale. And what are we up to here then, Steve? Because we've just literally come across from the dub we've been looking at. What are we looking at now?
Well, this is an area that I think it was about three years ago that we planted up under the agri-environment scheme and dug a couple of dubs out as well. It was always an unproductive corner of the field, and we thought this was a nice way to, have a wildlife area, and it's nice to have the financial encouragement, from government to the agri-environment scheme.
We're looking at it here now, and it's all dry, but this will fill up later on?
Yeah, I mean, you can see one dub in front of us here now. That's because of the excessively dry summer we had. It's dry at the moment. In the winter, it is full chock-a-block, and there's another one behind the other trees here. And it's just a lovely area to have and encourage the wildlife here.
And have you noticed a difference since you've actually planted it up wildlife-wise?
Yeah, I mean there's been a load of frogs and different birds and things in here, and at the time, I think I mentioned before, we were indebted to the Wildlife Trust as well, who all the volunteers came. We had a great day here planting. It was good fun, and they do a tremendous job around the island as well.
It is lovely to see. So it's a mixture of, is it a mix of sort of oak and broadleaf trees you planted up?
Yeah, it's all supplied by Steve Prescott from Manx Native Trees, and it's all native woodland trees. And there's when you walk through, I mean, there's a tremendous mix of trees. A lot more than you probably appreciate just looking over the fence here now.
It is lovely. It's a gorgeous setting. It'd be fascinating to see it come back when it's actually full of water. The other thing I think when you look at projects like this is, and I'm sure you must be aware of it, you get the pleasure from it. You see the change you've just been describing there, but it's also, I always like to think it's casting ahead to future generations as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's quite nice. I mean, we're working towards retirement on the farm now, but we have a young couple who we are hoping. My brother Chris and myself were hoping this young couple will take on the whole farm. They are very much into environmental work and regenerative farming, and they're delighted that a lot of this work has already been undertaken on the farm.
And it's just great to see this, Graham. Something like this, we were talking about it before, these sort of projects coming forward, and it's, you can see the difference already. Steve's mentioned he's already, just in the time that it's been here, seen a change. 10, 20, 30 years hence, it could totally alter the area.
this just makes my heart sing. I think I last saw this particular man-made dub a couple of years ago when it was very, very new. And to look at it now, apart from the tree tubes and stuff, it looks so natural. It looks like it's been here a lot longer. And straight away I can see species of spider in here. There's oak galls already. There's lots of invertebrate life going on in here that's just going to bring more and more stuff. It's fantastic to see.
There we are. I hope we've given, in this little short episode today, given you a taste of the importance of ponds and scrapes and dubs, how good it would be for the wildlife, whether it's in a lovely farm setting like this and in the environs of the beautiful Isle of Man, or in your back garden, whether it's large or small. It is true, it would seem, that you put the water there and the wildlife will come. So if people wanted to have a go at, maybe putting a pond in, can they speak to the Wildlife Trust, or any advice that people can get?
Yeah, absolutely. There's information on our website, www.mwt.im, and there's various actions for wildlife which include building ponds and bodies of water in your garden. Or if you want to do a larger project, or if you want to inquire about the Agri-Environment Scheme and how that supports farmland dubs and ponds, just give us a nod in the office or give us a call on 844 432.